Zhang Henshui's Golden Pink Family Chapter 35. During the festive season, you can use your mind to make up for your travels. The autumn light shines on your brows further into the mountains. I was really tired after being noisy for half the night, so I went home and had a good meal and slept until 12 o'clock the next day. Then I woke up. After having a random breakfast, he went to Luo Huahutong. Standing in the courtyard of Leng's house, he shouted, "Are there any mooncakes? Here are the people who are in a hurry to eat mooncakes." Mrs. Leng came out with a smile and said, Yes, we were waiting for you to come to eat mooncakes yesterday, but you didn't come. I guess you went to the opera." Yanxi said, "It's not the opera, and it's me." As he said that, he walked into the room. Qingqiu lifted the door curtain with one hand, stroked her hair with the other, and said with a smile, "Good morning." Yanxi said with a smile, "Although it is more than 1 o'clock now, I just got up not long ago." Qingqiu said, "Yesterday I probably had a lot of fun at night, so I couldn't get up this morning." Yanxi said, "It was already late when I came back from the opera. After I came back, I picked up my family and watched the moon together until 2 or 3 o'clock. I just went to bed." Qingqiu said, "The moon was really good last night. I really couldn't bear to sleep after seeing it." Yanxi said with a smile, "I guess the moon tonight is also good." Qingqiu said with a smile, "I've only heard about watching the moon on August 15th, but not on August 16th. Even if the moon tonight is good, it's out of date." "What does that mean?" Yanxi said, "Anyway, as long as the moonlight, that's it, no matter what day it is." While talking, Mrs. Leng went into the house to prepare fruit. Qingqiu said with a smile, "You tried your best to say that the moonlight is beautiful tonight." "What do you mean?" Yanxi said with a smile, "What else are you asking? You already knew it, and I didn't want to invite you to admire the moon." Qingqiu said, "Yesterday you didn't invite me to admire the moon, but today you come to admire the waning moon. I won't do it." Yanxi said, "Yesterday during the day, I came to pay homage to you, but you went out again. You wanted to come at night, but I can't leave. I'll invite you to go for a walk in the park tonight, will you go?" Just as he was saying this, Mrs. Leng came out. Qingqiu didn't know how to reply, so Mrs. Leng remained silent. Mother Han was busy and had put out several plates of fruit. Qingqiu said with a smile, "This is a klitsch. If you want to say please, then it should be more klitsch. It's up to you. You can eat whatever you like." Yanxi said with a smile, "I'm not polite, but the Lord doesn't invite you. The guest will not drink." He picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Qingqiu said with a smile, "You still said that the guest won't drink even if the host doesn't invite you?" Before he finished speaking, he drank first. Yanxi also laughed after thinking about it. Mrs. Leng held a hookah and sat sideways on a chair nearby. She saw Yanxi eating fried walnuts with a big smile on her face. Qingqiu stood under the small screen, also smiling slightly. Mrs. Leng slowly smoked the hookah and saw that this pair of young men were truly a match. It was her lifelong wish to have their marriage come true. Originally, last time their fifth lady came, there was a chance for the marriage to take place. But as soon as Uncle Qingqiu went to Tianjin, the yamen here told him to do things there. He couldn't come back, so there was no one to arrange the marriage. Good to come forward and mention it. Yanxi felt embarrassed when she saw Mrs. Leng smiling all over her face and looking only at herself. Yin smiled and said, "I just like to eat things like peanuts and walnut kernels. Does Annie think I eat too much?" Mrs. Leng said with a smile, "This is fried at home. There is plenty. You can eat it." Yanxi smiled. He said to Qingqiu, "It's delicious. Give me some more, and let me take it home to eat." When Qingqiu heard that, he turned around and went into the room to get it. Yanxi said, "I'm not busy. I'm not going home today. I'm living next door, because I have a friend who plans to move and wants to take over this house." I quickly packed up my things and vacated the house. I'm going to move here today. These small antiques should be packed away first, and the heavy furniture will be moved tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. After hearing this, Qingqiu felt like she had something on her mind. Yin asked, "Is it true? In the first half of the year, you were in full swing and made it very lively. Now that it has disintegrated like this in less than a few months, it is really anticlimactic." Yanxi said, "Didn't I tell you earlier? My father has wanted it for a long time. I moved back. I only kept the house here while spending time at home. I also listened to Jin Rong and dismissed all the cooks. Unexpectedly, There were only 2 people to guard the house. It's inconvenient, and it's very troublesome to have a cup of tea, so I think it would be nice to have friends to stay with me. His family is not big, and some of our friends can use it to keep the poetry club going. You still don't have to move. It will save a lot of money. Qingqiu smiled and said, a noble man like Master Jin Quan, how can he save a few dollars? Yanxi said with a smile, this is a curse on me. I am a person who only spends money, but does not make money. If I don't restrain myself anymore, I will be a little embarrassed. Mrs. Leng interrupted after hearing this. He smiled and said, a family like ours still cares about how much money Mr. Jin makes? Besides, you are still in school, so you can't talk about it now. Yanxi said, it doesn't matter whether you make money or not, but, Tai, it's a waste, because I'm afraid it will be used in the future, and it won't be reined in. Mrs. Leng puffed out smoke and nodded, that's right, don't waste money, but also cherish blessings. Qingqiu said with a smile, hey, there's no need for you to bring out Yanjiwen. Master Qi just said a few polite words. Mrs. Leng said with a smile to Yanxi, old people are always a bit superstitious. Don't be ridiculous. Since you don't have a cook over there, you don't have to be polite. You can have dinner at my place in the afternoon. Yanxi said, okay, but Andy must only prepare some home-cooked food, not too much. The home-cooked dishes are nothing to eat. Even if you prepare some special dishes, they are nothing compared to the dishes at home. So you don't need to declare this first. I'm not saying this politely. It's really like this, Yanxi said. As for spending money, it's different if the chef cooks it every day. But eating those big fish and meat every day is weird. Home-cooked dishes are different, and there are a lot of seasonings and a lot of Ajinomoto in them, which loses the original flavor of the dishes. Mrs. Leng smiled and said, I'm afraid I can't do anything else. If you want to eat side dishes, this is it. It's not difficult. I can make more of them. Yanxi said, that would be great. Mrs. Leng said, and went to Peihan Guanji to buy some side dishes. Yanxi smiled and said to Qingqiu, in this case, I will have to trouble you again. Qingqiu said with a smile. Just guess next day, Qingqiu told her mother that she wanted to borrow Yanxi's car and go sightseeing in Zishan for half a day. Going in the same car were 2 female classmates in the same class. Mrs. Leng said, who are they? Qingqiu said, you don't recognize them when they come to our house. Mrs. Leng said, it doesn't matter if you have fun, but you have to come back early. If you come back late, you will be shut down. Outside the city, Qingqiu said, why do you have to play like that? I will be back at 3 or 4 o'clock. After hearing what she said, Mrs. Leng didn't pursue it. At 11 o'clock, Yanxi sent someone to tell Mother Han that the car was ready. When Qingqiu heard about it, he came this way, and when he reached the gate, both the driver and the driver got on the bus. Yanxi was sitting in the car. When he saw her coming, he nodded, greeted her, and said with a smile, come up, come up. Yanxi opened the car door and let Qingqiu get in the car. As soon as Qingqiu sat down, the horn blared and the car drove away. Yanxi asked, Andy is really open now, and the boundaries between men and women are very light. Qingqiu pursed his lips and smiled, unless you are like this, it can't be done with other people. But openly I was afraid of running into trouble when I said I wanted to go out with you. I just wanted to borrow your car. Yanxi smiled and said, that's a bit reluctant. You don't have anything big to do, so where can you borrow my car? Qingqiu said, this is nothing more than deception. How could she not know that we were hanging out together? Yanxi said, my old aunt is a kind person, similar to my mother. People are really kind, and you will be able to prove it in the future. After hearing what he said, Qingqiu remained silent and just looked out the car window. Yanxi smiled and took her hand and said, why don't you say anything? Qingqiu frowned and said, don't mention this. When you mention this, I feel worried. Yanxi said, what's on your mind? Qingqiu pouted at the driver's seat in front of him and remained silent. Yanxi understood and said nothing. When the car came out of Zizamen, we could see far and near that all the sorghum and wheat had been cut off from the crop fields. It was a plain, with some half-green and half-yellow trees, and the air was very refreshing. The car was going very fast, and the wind blew in front of my face. When I smelled it, I felt very refreshed. Qingqiu said with a smile, I haven't been outside the city for a few days. It's very interesting to go out of the city suddenly. Yanxi said, I have asked you to go out of the city for a long time, but you always refuse to come. Now you are happy to say so. In the future, I think, if nothing happens, wouldn't it be nice if we took the car decision to talk? The wind blew over, blowing, the yellow leaves, fluttering in all directions. The grass on the mountain grows 2 to 3 feet long on this day. The small tree growing in the grass, just above the top of the grass, becomes more and more yellow. Even those grasses are swaying here and there, yellow and green. When the sun is shining, you can feel that the color of the mountains is mostly yellow than green. Yanxi smiled and said, autumn scenery is really interesting. But this year's autumn colors come faster than last year's. What's going on? Qingqiu was still in a trance while listening to him, but then he didn't realize it. Smiled. Yanxi said, why are you laughing? Qingqiu said with a smile, you just learned your craft in front of the teacher, and you are about to show off in front of the teacher. Yanxi said, what are you talking about? Qingqiu said, didn't I tell you last time? The autumn wind will make you thinner first. You said that autumn will come faster this year. It is obviously based on this poem. Yanxi said with a smile, no wonder people say that I have a new one. Teacher, my knowledge has improved a lot, so I speak very politely now. Didn't I even know how to speak before I was taught by the teacher? Qingqiu was afraid that he would misunderstand, so he quickly smiled and said, why are you so anxious? That poem was not written by me. Not only did you not use his words, but you also copied his words. What does it have to do with me? I just took advantage of it and told a joke. Why? Did you say something wrong to the teacher? The teacher yelled on the right. What does it mean to let people hear it? The waiter in Zishan Hotel knows Yanxi, so he didn't need to pay for it. He had already made a pot of black tea and served 2 plates of snacks. It was brought all the way and placed on the table at this time. The west wind stopped, but the chirping of insects in the deep grass rose and fell again. Hearing this gave people a strange feeling. In front of where they were sitting was an acacia tree. When the weather gets cold, a lot of the leaves on this tree have withered and turned yellow. Suddenly, there was a weak west wind, blowing off 1 or 2 of the withered yellow leaves on the tree, whirling in the air, and blowing them all the way to the table where they were having tea. Qingqiu caught a leaf with his hand, held it up to his eyes, and said with a smile, the autumn atmosphere is really deep. The leaves are so yellow, if in 10 days and a half, the leaves fall away, it will become even more desolate. Life will be even more desolate. The situation is so easy. Yanxi smiled and said, that's why I say young people should have fun in time. But you don't agree with me, thinking that fun is a degenerate behavior in life. Qingqiu smiled, said, the entertainment you are talking about is different from others. What we think of entertainment is looking at flowers, admiring the moon, and traveling around mountains and rivers. These are all entertainment. The entertainment you are talking about is that the more lively the better, whoring, gambling, eating and drinking, wearing clothes, all the time. If you say it's about having fun, doesn't it make people all over the world become despicable? Yanxi said, but the fun I'm talking about doesn't mean eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, and wearing clothes. Why do you say that? I'm also degenerate. Qingqiu lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. Yanxi said, I think you have been poisoned by old books. In some places, you are simply restraining yourself and looking for trouble. Qingqiu smiled and said, you are making trouble unreasonably. How can you involve reading in this matter? Bring up the old book? Yanxi said, I don't agree with you abiding by the etiquette of Duke Zhou and Confucius. In general social life, I agree with you, but for me, you are also a gentleman. A little sour. Qingqiu was silent for a while, and then said slowly, it's not that I'm sour. You think, the days are long, why should we? At this point, he paused. Yanxi smiled and said, whatever, you can't give me a reason. Come on, let's take a walk on this mountain road. If you have something to say, it will be more interesting while walking. Yanxi did not ask Qingqiu if he agreed, took her flower umbrella, opened it upward, and said with a smile, let's go. Let's go. Qingqiu stood up, holding the skirt of her clothes, and said with a smile, actually, just sit down, why go? I'm a little afraid of getting tired. Yanxi held up the umbrella to block the sun from Qingqiu. He held her arm with his left hand, and said with a smile, afraid of being tired? I can help you. So the two of them walked side by side under a flower umbrella. Flower garden, walking slowly, up a path at the foot of the mountain. Qingqiu smiled and said, "This is the best place." Yanxi said, "You are always like this. You have to go to this place where no one can reach. It is not convenient to sit here and ask for tea or snacks." Qingqiu walked to Yi Zhang, sat down on the wicker chair, and said with a smile, "Are you here to see the mountains? Or are you here to drink tea and have snacks? If you are here for the snacks, I won't tell you. If you want to see the mountains, always talk about the mountains here. Is this a good place?" Yanxi said, "I can do anything. Since you said this is a good place, I'll be very obedient." As he said this, he lay down on the wicker chair. Stretching his legs, he said, "Good air, comfortable." Qingqiu smiled and said, "This is what the wealthy people say. Look at the sedan bearers at the foot of the mountain. They have been sitting here every day for 360 days, and they don't necessarily say comfortable. They don't care if the air is good or not. If they can go into your kitchen and smell the smell of meat, then they will say that it is a place you are not willing to go to, right? You are very opposed to the bourgeoisie. Let me put it this way. I'll find a little guy to work around, and we can live a poor civilian life together, okay?" Qingqiu pursed his lips and smiled, saying nothing. Holding a floral silk handkerchief in his hand, he held his left cheek and looked at the mountain scenery in trance. Yanxi also followed her gaze and saw that the high and low pine trees on the mountain were particularly green and old. Half of the leaves of the various fruit trees among the trees were brown, and the wind blew the leaves, making a rustling sound. Qingqiu said, "We always come here to visit Zishan. I don't want to go to school." Yanxi said, "Let's just choose a Sunday. Come here once a week. Do you think so?" Qingqiu said with a smile, "This is your first time to visit, and we are still on the way. This is about the future," Yanxi said. "I'm not a waiter. Wherever I think, that's where I say it." Qingqiu said, "That's why, wherever you say it, you forget it. Don't you think so?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Do you have any basis for what you said?" By this time, the car had arrived at Yuquan Mountain. Qingqiu looked out the window at the row of ancient houses and several-story small towers on the top of the mountain, which were getting closer and closer. She was lost in thought, but she didn't pay attention to what Yanxi asked her. Yanxi thought it was her own words or that she was pushing too hard, and she couldn't explain why. Therefore, "I don't want to talk about it anymore." The car arrived at Badaku and stopped in an empty field at the foot of the mountain. Yanxi got out of the car, and when Qingqiu came down, she gave him a hand. This is outside the door of Zishan Hotel. Under the terrace, outside the door, many tea houses were full of people, most of whom were foreigners. Although there were still one or two empty seats, Qingqiu didn't want to sit down because he thought he was among foreigners. Just step forward. After passing here, there is an open space with two empty seats behind the small flower garden, looking at the mountain range of Shangbi Moya. At this time, although the autumn wind was blowing everywhere and the forest was covered with yellow leaves, the wild flowers growing in the mountains, yellow and purple, with small balls of flowers, were also charming. The little grasshoppers and small yellow butterflies in the grass flew around in the sunlight against the wind. It seemed that there was a kind of fresh fragrance in the grass. Qingqiu said, "Just smell this fragrance. How good is it? No matter how good a garden is built in the city, such a natural scenery cannot be obtained. You have everything in your house. Why don't you build a villa in the West Mountain?" Yanxi said, "Of course I don't have one. But now I've given it away." Qingqiu said, "Why did you build a house and give it to someone else?" Yanxi laughed, "If I tell you, you will scold the bourgeoisie again." Qingqiu laughed, "It seems that you are afraid of my scolding. Whenever we discuss any issue, you always shut me up first." Yanxi laughed, "It's not that you are afraid of scolding. I am ashamed of being from the bourgeoisie." Qingqiu said, "Don't talk about this irrelevant question. Tell me why you gave the villa away." Yanxi said, "It's right inside this mountain. We originally built a villa. Although there are not many rooms, there are more than 20 of them, and there is a yard with a flower garden. It is not small in this mountain, but this way, the cost is very high. We need 2 cooks, 2 servants, and a florist. And the things in the house are often damaged, so they have to be replaced." Qingqiu said, "That is also natural. What is the cost?" Yanxi said, "You don't know. Before the villa was built, you also said that you would live in the mountain for a while, and I also said that I would live in the mountain for a while. Later, when the villa was really built, everyone lived there for 2 days each, and they all felt bored and didn't come again. Even if they occasionally come to Zishan, They only go to Zishan Hotel at the foot of the mountain, and they don't want to go up the mountain again. Therefore, the villa was placed on the top of the mountain, and a few subordinates were allowed to stay there, enjoying a good life there. Although it was only $100 a month, it was amazing after 3 years. It was the same for 3 years. Later, my mother thought about it, and said that what we did was too stupid. It would be better to ask a few of the subordinates to go back to the city and lock the door. But there was a problem. Without anyone to take care of it, the flowers and trees would be very dirty, and even the house would be easily damaged. In less than a year, the house would collapse. So some people said that the house should be sold. However, selling a house is a matter of dignity. If people misunderstand and say that the Jin family is going to sell the property, wouldn't it be a joke? So it was very difficult. You couldn't keep it, and you couldn't sell it. Later, there was an American who had a good relationship with my father. My father was happy to do him a favor and let him live in the villa. Qingqiu said, "This American is like Zikan, a fish in the right place. But he can't live in this mountain every day, can he?" Yanxi said, "He is very reliable. He goes up the mountain every Saturday and comes down on Monday. He is not willing to live here for free. He always gives us something every year. Even if the house is broken, he will repair it." Qingqiu said, "In this way, this house is like a concession, temporarily under the management of the Americans. In terms of property, it still belongs to your Jin mansion." Yanxi said, "Of course." Qingqiu said, "If we want to take it back, will it be troublesome?" Yanxi said, "It shouldn't be troublesome, right?" Qingqiu said, "If so, I advocate taking it back." Yanxi smiled and said, "Why take it back? Do you want to live in the mountain?" Qingqiu said silently, "And just walk forward." Yanxi smiled and said, "Today is Sunday. The American must be in the mountain. Let's go visit him and show you the house. What do you think?" Qingqiu looked at her watch and saw that it was only 1 o'clock. She asked, "Is the road far? Won't it be late to go down the mountain?" Yanxi said, "There are many sedan chairs at the foot of the mountain. We can go there by sedan chair." Qingqiu saw a round stone under a pine tree on the side of the road, so she sat on the stone and counted with her fingers. She smiled and said, "It will take at least 3 hours to go back and forth. It will be 4 o'clock when we get down the mountain." Yanxi said, "It's still in time to go home at 4 o'clock." As he said that, he also sat down on the stone. This place is a small road. No one comes and goes. There is only the sound of the wind blowing the leaves, like a heavy rain, rustling in waves. The grass under her feet was blown by the wind, and it was like waves on the water, falling downwind layer by layer. Qingqiu looked at it and was in a trance. Yanxi saw her one hand on the stone, and when he touched it, it was cold. Then he held her hand, and said with a smile, "Don't be in a daze, take the sedan chair up the mountain." Qingqiu turned around and smiled. Yanxi said, "The weather is not very cold, but I am very hot from walking. Why are your hands cold?" Qingqiu said, "I hold the stone, and the stone is cold, not my body." Yanxi held her hand and saw that her arm was white and tender, and she wore a soft gold bracelet with a thin chain and jadeite, which was very charming. Then he smiled and said, "This gold bracelet looks very suitable for you. You never liked gold and jade before, and I am very opposed to it. I think these gold and jade things will increase vulgarity on vulgar people, but will add a lot of beauty to beautiful women. Who doesn't like things in this world, whether male or female? Look, the peacock in the Wansheng garden will spread its tail when it sees people wearing silk. I think your previous way of opposing beauty is wrong." Qingqiu said, "I thank you for mentioning this pair of gold bracelets. But I dare not say it is real in front of my mother. I just say it is fake. So for this reason, I will not wear it unless I go out with you. Although I am not a vulgar person, I dare not accept your compliment of the word beauty. But you are so kind to give it to me, and you hope that I will wear it. If you want to do this, I will do it this way." Yanxi smiled and said, "I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. What you mean is that a scholar will die for his confidant." Qingqiu said, "What's there to be said? Don't you say? Do women dress up to please others? Actually, this is not an insult to women. Even if it is, I think it is fair. There are countless men in the world who dress up to please others. You have a wide range of social contacts. When you go to see your girlfriend, don't you shave, don't you get a haircut, and don't you dress well? This is just a small matter. There are many men in the past and present who have sacrificed their lives and property for women. I think it is more appropriate to change the word scholar to male. Yanxi smiled and said, I don't disagree with this change. It's just that you said I have a wide range of social contacts. I can't accept your statement. Qingqiu smiled and said, the girlfriends you know include young ladies, female students, actors, and social stars. Isn't it a wide range of social contacts? Yanxi said, where did this rumor come from? There is no such thing. Qingqiu smiled and said, it doesn't matter whether it is true or not. Everyone knows it in their hearts. Yanxi said, don't say it. Let's go up the mountain to stroll. After saying that, he ran down the mountain and waved to the tea house. The waiter came over, and Yanxi said, hire 2 sedan chairs for me to go to the Jin family garden on the mountain. The waiter asked, are they for round trips? Yanxi hesitated for a while and said, just hire round trips, and we'll talk about it later. The waiter hired a sedan chair, which was beneficial, so he hired one immediately and took it to the foot of the mountain. Qingqiu was sitting alone, so she walked down the mountain step by step. When she saw the sedan chair, she couldn't help laughing. It turned out to be 2 sedan chair poles, carrying a small rattan chair. There were a few small bamboo poles on the chair, supporting a small blue cloth canopy. Under the chair, there was a small wooden board hanging down, and the rope was tied to the sedan chair poles. It looked like a footrest. Qingqiu smiled and said, is it like this? If you sit on it, you will fall down. The sedan bearers said, it is very stable. It is not a big deal. Miss, you sit on it and try it. It is definitely correct. After hearing what he said, Yanxi sat on the sedan first and said to the sedan bearers, try to lift it up. After hearing this, the 2 sedan bearers really lifted the sedan and bumped it. Yanxi stepped on the board and stretched her feet. She waved to Qingqiu and said, you sit on it. It is very stable and very comfortable. Qingqiu pointed at Yanxi and smiled, if you fall down, you have to insure me. Yanxi said, sit on it. I will insure you. It is definitely correct. Qingqiu had no choice but to sit on it, because he had already sat on it. The 2 sedans went up along the path on the mountain. This trip occupied an important page in their love history, which was different from ordinary people's mountain trips. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.